What is up, you guys? Glitchiz here, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm bringing you my ultimate survival guide for the Way of Winter scenario. We'll preface this by saying that this video is probably going to be pretty long, so I'm going to have timestamps down in the description, skipping to each of the major topics. So if you don't want to watch the whole thing, if there's a specific thing you're looking for, you can click those links and get there a little bit quicker. I also have to shout out Starry Studios once again for sponsoring this video. They were kind enough to give me early access to a test server that had all the Way of Winter content unlocked in order for me to get some early footage for you guys. So I appreciate the support of the Glitch Gang community, and thanks again for sponsoring the video. But without any further ado, let's jump into it. So how I think I want to break this video up is sort of go by the phases that we're going to be entering during the scenario. So in the first phase, obviously we're limited to the type of memetics we're going to be getting unlocked, as well as what type of facilities are going to be available to us. So in the first phase, the first order of business is going to be securing a territory location, building an efficient base, and building the first crafting facilities that are going to help keep us alive. So let's go into that. So I don't want to toot my own horn, but in my opinion, the Glitchiz PvE base that I've made videos for is going to be a perfect design for this scenario, and I'll tell you why. It is because the main facility that you're going to be getting in the first phase to heat your base is a campfire. If we go to the memetics tree and go to building, under the temperature control tab, which is a new memetic that we can unlock, we get access to the campfire. The first thing you're going to want to do when you build this base, in my opinion, is keep it small. Do the normal one width triangle circle with some support beams, because we're going to be upgrading later on, and then an outer ring that is 2 triangle widths wide. That'll give you a nice circular hexagonal shaped base that is nice and compact with a definite center point. And then the first thing you're going to want to try and do early on is go to facility, function facility, and throw down that campfire in the dead center. Now, as you see, the big thing that we're going to be monitoring during this entire scenario across every phase is our temperature readings. Underneath the minimap, there's a new temperature gauge that fluctuates from a gray comfy zone to either a freezing cold zone or a blazing hot zone. And you want to try and stay as comfy temperature as possible at all times. And the campfire is the first main thing, at least when you're in your territory, that can be used to do that. It will give you a 5 to 15 degree swing, depending on what you put in it. So I believe it's 10 degree swing is the max on the campfire. You can't do anything for cold, unfortunately, but for heat, which is the main thing we're going to be running into in the initial phase, is coal and logs are primarily the first 2 main things you would use. Logs would swing the temperature by 5 degrees. Coal and barreled premium fuel, which I personally would not use on a campfire, would swing at 10 degrees. You can use portable mixed fuel as well, but again, that's a precious resource too. I wouldn't spend it on a campfire. So charcoal and logs is really the 2 main things you would need. Log and primarily would be the one I would go with. It's only 5 degree swings, but the temperatures aren't too crazy in the beginning, so you can kind of get away with it. Plus, you can farm these up super quick. If you want to get a ton of logs and just burn a bunch of charcoal so you have like thousands and thousands stack, you can put as much of this in there as you want. So ideally you would just farm up a ton of this in advance, put a couple thousand stack in there so you have several hours worth. I think 1 charcoal will give you 1 minute. Same for logs, it's just a 5 degree difference. So ideally you'd have a couple thousand charcoal made, you'd throw that in there, that way you're set up for like 1 full day or 2 full days worth of resources, similar to how the biogenerators work, where you can put wood in for there for several days of power. That's how the campfire is going to work. And if you see here, unfortunately you have to have the logs on you, which is really frustrating. So let's go ahead and grab this 1,000 stack. I'll probably be overweight, but that's okay. But you're going to want to go in, and right now, as you can see, we're sitting at 10 degrees Celsius. So if we go ahead and interact with the campfire, we can go ahead and throw a bunch of logs in there. Just see 99 only gives us 10 minutes. So we'll go ahead and deposit. And now you can see that it goes from the 10 degrees to nothing, because you actually have to turn it on once you've inputted your material. So you can turn it on and off depending on what type of time of day it is, because the temperature will get colder at night and warmer during the day by probably 5 degrees or so, depending on the area. It can be more. But as you can see, once we turn that campfire on, it is at 15 degrees. Now, the reason why this Glitchiz base design is perfect, at least for your starter base, is because the initial campfire has about a 5-meter range, which is almost 2 triangles deep in diameter width of distance. So if we're at the very, very edge of our door, you can see that we're back down to 10 degrees. But if we step just a couple feet inside, we should see that 15% jump again. So there we go. So all the way up to the first pretty much wall, we're getting temperature increases for our stove or our campfire. So you can have it in this one little outside base, and as long as you're putting your materials away from the wall a little bit, your initial starting benches, you can interact with it like how I am now and still be in the clear for the increased temperature. So you don't have to worry about losing temperature on your way crafting something, for example. So as long as you push them away from the wall, you can set it up enough to where you're still in range of that campfire to get that bonus. Now, the other thing to take in consideration that I found out is furnaces will also increase your temperature as well by 5 degrees. So even though this temperature would technically be probably 10 degrees when we're this far away from the wall, just because we're near a furnace, the furnace will also increase 5 degrees. So furnace is one thing that you can have where you won't have to worry about the distance you are from it. You'll always be a little bit warmer when you're standing next to it. So you're definitely going to want to get some furnaces down. So that's one thing you can do there. Obviously put down a couple deviation containers for your first couple of deviants or deviations, a bed, obviously level 1 containers, as well as some storage crates. You're also going to want to build a basic stove, which is the other thing we're going to have available to us in the first phase. So in the first phase, you pretty much get access to number 1 and number 2 are the tiers that we're going to get. And all of these categories are going to have new memetics that we can unlock. So the first one that we went over was building tab. That will have the campfire and nothing else for phase 1. So this is all we're going to have access to under building for phase 1 is the campfire. So that's the first main survival tip. Then under logistics, we have our stove. This is the next big means of survival. In the Way of Winter update, we have 7 new plants that you can gather. We have the seaweed, which I'll probably post pictures of all these and their stats up right now. We have the seaweed, which can be found along riverbeds, well, not riverbeds, but beaches near the ocean, any body of land where ocean meets the water, basically, which in this particular area, the starting Onyx Tundra, is everything is connected to the ocean, pretty much. Even where my base is here, this little pond is considered seawater, and you can find seaweed all on these shores, too. So you see the picture of it. That is what you want to look for. The other thing is going to be spike mado. This looks like an orange tree with spikes coming out of them. These are going to be all over the place in this first starting area as well. So you can grab that. And any of these plants, by the way, if you see them, pick them up because they're going to be very important. So we got spike mado. Then we have mint. Mint is another one, a little green plant with white flowers on it. That's what you're going to want to look for. That will be useful in a lot of ingredients. Next, we have the ice melon. That will primarily be in warmer areas, but you can in certain locations find it earlier on in the cold areas as well. You just be a little bit more harder time finding them because a lot of this stuff gets covered in snow, which makes even the ores harder to see. So we have ice melon, and then we have the sunny ginger. This is all over the place, even in the starter zone. Very common plant. It's got like a purplish tint to it, some unique leaves. Be sure to grab a bunch of those. Then we have the snow fungus, which is a new mushroom that we can grab. That's going to be used in a lot of ingredients, as well as, last but not least, the polar pepper. This I found in the more extreme climate snow areas, and that's definitely used in some of the high-end food items later on as well. But the reason why you want to collect these as early on as possible is even if you don't have a stove, the new particular food gatherables, in this case, the polar pepper, the ice melon, the mint, the spike mado, and the sunny ginger will all give you a heat or cold resistance bonus just by eating them raw. So you get 5 points of heat or cold resistance for the raw material. But then if you unlock the memetic in the memetics tree for phase 1 under infrastructure or under logistics for the stove, you'll get access to grilled snow mushrooms and grilled seaweed. And then the other thing you're going to want to take is dishes 2, which is going to be the last thing we'll have available in phase 1, because that will unlock the salty roasted spike tomato and the ice melon, which are the 2 starter food items that give you plus 50 hydration and plus 50 energy instead of the 10, but gives you 10 heat resistance and 10 cold resistance respectively, depending on the food item if you craft it. So you're getting 5 more heat or cold resistance by making a slightly better food item with these 2 recipes. So in the first phase, definitely get all the way up to at least dishes 2, because these are going to be really important food items to craft early on to help manage your temperature as well. And you can build that right from the normal stove. So go ahead and grab that. Moving on to the crafting table, the next thing that you can use to basically increase your temperature resistance is the leather working mimetic. This will allow us to create rawhide, leftover scrap hides, and velvet. And what those are used for is, if you go to your gear workbench, even at tier 1, you'll notice that every single piece of armor now has an additional slot where you can put in a new type of hide. Now there is dozens of these hides, and depending on which type of armor you have, it will give you a different special bonus. I'm not going to go through for the sake of time and read all of these. What I will instead do is give a huge shout out to another big Once Human content creator by the name of Mr. Kraken. He recently posted an early game survival guide, and in that video, he shouted out a Excel sheet that he made going over every single type of hide in the game across every different type of armor piece with a list of the buff that that particular hide gives you. So this is an amazing cheat sheet that he came up with. Yes, I did ask him in advance. He's given me permission to share this with you guys. So what I'm going to do is link this as a downloadable file in the description. You guys are feel free to grab it and use it for yourself as a little cheat sheet. And this will give you a list of every single buff that those hides can give your armor. And again, you're going to want to be killing the new animal types as early on as you can when you're gathering your new plants. Also be killing the new animals. We have seals, polar bears, a bunch of elk and caribou type animals and deer that are running around. Reindeer, I think they're called actually. Kill all of them that you can and gather as much hides as you can, because you're going to want to use them for your armor throughout every single tier that you're building. Depending on the armor piece, they kind of focus on different things. So just in quick summarize, the hat is typically going to be damage reduction. So you've got reduction while sprinting, while scoped, while moving, weak spot damage reduction, things like that. Your jacket and pants are going to primarily be your temperature resistances. So I'd have one of each ideally. That's the tip I would give for that. On the jacket, for example, do something that has cold and frost resist. And then on the pants, or vice versa, do one that has heat resist plus 10. So that way you get a nice balance of both, regardless of what territory you're in. So that would be pants and jacket. That's primarily for temperature. Moving on to gloves. This is going to be for gathering. You don't necessarily need the specialization anymore. By putting on one of these hides, you can now get bonuses to your logging and mining speed, increase yield for poultry meats and rabbit meats, increase herb yield, increase seed yield. So depending on what type of hide or skin that you put on your gloves, you get better gathering now as well. And then moving on to the shoes, this is going to be primarily for movement, better jump height, faster climbing speed, faster generic movement speed, better roll speed, things like that. And then last but not least, for the mask, this is going to be your damage. So you get bonuses to elemental damage, frost, shock. I don't think there's one for blaze, but you got melee damage on here. Status damage, I guess, could be used for that. Physical damage is increased. Melee crit dampening. So that's going to be more of your combat stuff for your mask. But that is a quick summary. And again, I'll be linking that downloadable file in the description. Feel free to download that and use it as you guys see fit. But that is how the new armor system is going to work. That is the other big thing in phase 1 that's going to help us survive that we want to keep track of, is our armor. So we have that as an option. Moving on in the medics tab for phase 1, the last thing that we have besides cooking and crafting our armor, which will be under the infrastructure tab, is going to be Polar Expedition 1. And that will give us access to thermoium, hedium, and coldium. Really weird names, but they're what we're going to be using, at least in the early phase. So the thermium can be crafted from the supplies workbench just by using gravel, which obviously you can pretty much get everywhere. You also get access to hedium. This will use the thermoium and charcoal, and then the coldium will use thermoium, and ice cubes. And what these do, at least the helium and coldium, was they will give a 5-degree change in temperature for either hot or cold, depending on which one you craft. And the tip I have for these is these are one-off craftable items. So you can't stack them is basically what I'm getting at. So there's no point ever in creating more than one of these at a time. So ideally you're just going to want to, like, before you go out on an exploration, craft one helium and one coldium. And how these work is they basically sit idly in your backpack. You just craft these at the bench using the materials that you've got. And they will just sit in your backpack and last for 60 minutes. So the second they enter your backpack, you're going to see that white durability bar just slowly going down every minute, and they will give you a 10 resist bonus for heat or cold. So a little bit better than the plants, and it's passive, but it's a nice little early phase 1 buff that you're going to want to have at least one of each in your backpack at all times. And the reason why I say don't craft more than one is because they're not stackable. So if I crafted 3 of these things, all 3 of them would be losing durability at the exact same time. So if you build 3, all 3 are going to break the same time 1 would break. So you're only going to be able to use 1 at a time. So craft 1 of each of these at any given time. And the cool thing is that they're recyclable. So once the 60 minutes runs out, the helium or coldium will revert back to thermoium, which then you can then use to recraft a new helium or coldium ore. So you only need 1 of these at any given point. But then moving on, last but not least, actually, I think that is it for phase 1. So that would be all the thing. Oh, no, I totally forgot. So you're also, on top of going into your gear and memetics, under the crafting panel, or no, it would be infrastructure. On top of the polar expedition, you're going to want to at least spec into all the way up to bronze crafting. And the reason you want to get bronze is because if you go to your gears workbench, the last thing I wanted to point out before I forgot is a torch. A torch is going to be your best friend early on. And the reason why a torch is so good is if we look at our thing here, we're at 7 degrees when we're standing by the heat. But if I whip out my torch, we're up to 22. So you get, well, that was a big jump, I think, because I was closer. So the torch will give you another 5-degree swing just by holding it. That's the one downside is basically once you get into really cold areas, the fire goes out and it doesn't really work anymore, which later phases will be able to unlock some better stuff here, which we'll go over in a second. But early on, main key things you're going to want to do: kill animals for hides, gather plants for herbs and cooking, either just to cook the basic ones or just to eat raw, craft a campfire for the center of your first phase small base, and a torch. That's in summary all the thing, and coldium and helium. Those are the main phase 1 things that are going to keep us alive. Now, once we get into phase 2, some things start opening up a little bit. So let's go into the memetics again. So this will be the next chapter in the timestamps is phase 2. So in phase 2, we're going to get access to 3 and I believe 4 as well. So in phase 3, well, section 3, phase 2 and beyond of the scenario, we also unlock under infrastructure Chaosium and the lantern, the Chaosium lantern. This is basically going to replace our coldium and helium. Now, I believe they do stack. So you can have one of each of those coldium and heliums as well and have this lantern. Now, the way the lantern works, and I think it's a little bugged out in the test server, is it supposedly runs on Chaosium, which you can craft at the synthesis bench. Or no, not the synthesis bench. You craft it at the supply workbench. But, as you can see, it's not on this list. And that is because you need to craft an upgraded bench. But if you're going to be breaking down all of this stuff, you might as well expand a little bit further. So we can go ahead and break down all these walls and unveil the phase 2 base design, which is basically the normal bottom floor of the initial Glitchiz PvE base design with the extra outer ring. And then what we can do is delete our fireplace, and I'll explain why here in a second. We can delete these ceiling tiles and then build our second set of stairs, our spiral staircase, the same way we used to. Got one here. Got one here. So now we have access to a second floor. And now, mind you, you're probably wondering, well, aren't you going to lose heat? We're going to get to that in a second. So we're prepping for phase 2 and beyond base now. So once we hit phase 2, some things are going to unlock that is going to allow us to build this even further. So once we're done with phase 1 and we get more mimetic options, then you can upgrade to phase 2 and make a 2-level base. Move all of your benches, upgrade them to the advanced versions. So we got the higher tier benches. You can go ahead and move this onto the second floor or off to the side, anywhere you want. You can move this out and away. Put this off to the side. You can delete your old stove because you're probably going to create the better one over on the end. You can get your electric furnaces, things like that. Go ahead and plant those down. You can delete these, build electric ones. So we're going to open up a bunch of new stuff here. Build your generators. I got them on the test server up on the roof. So now we got some electric furnaces going. And mind you, the electric furnace, for whatever reason, does not give a temperature boost. Or actually, no, it does. It's 5 degrees as well. I take that back. It was just bugging out. But yeah, the furnaces will give 5 degrees, similar to the lower level furnaces. So we can plug those in, but now obviously they're more efficient. But now we just got some more room. Now, obviously, without a campfire, this base is going to be freezing. We're at 12 degrees right now during the day. Well, the other thing under the phase 2 mimetics that unlock, which is going to be under crafting section, I believe. No, crafting's not going to have anything. It's going to be under a building. So we had temperature control in phase 1, but once we get to phase 2, 3 opens up, and we can craft the simple vintage stove. So once we get into phase 2, here's the order of operations. First thing you're going to want to do is unlock that vintage stove, put that down in the dead center of the base. This is going to be more efficient. Still want it dead center. It's more powerful, has a longer range. So that's why we expanded it, is because the campfire only reached 1 layer out, but that furnace will reach an extra layer out now, an additional few meters. So now we can have more room. And then the other thing that we want to make is our lantern, which you can craft on an more advanced synthesis bench right here. And how this works is it uses chaosiums as fuel. And when the temperature is low, it will provide heat automatically. And when the temperature is high, it will absorb heat automatically. And this is going to be an active use item. So what you want to do is put, as you can see here, on your toolbar, I have it on 4 right now. That is the lantern. I also have a bunch of the chaosium, which you can craft at the synthesis bench. Not the original one, but the bigger one. You can craft this, or no, I think the chaosium is also at the supplies workbench. Or no, I'm wrong again. Chaosium is actually at the furnace. My apologies. So let's go over to here. And chaosium will use the hot rock ore and or cold crystal ore. So in order to do that lantern, I believe you can use charcoal as well. Or no, it has to use hot rock and cold rock ore. So in phase 2, the map's going to open up even further. It's going to give us access to more extreme weather condition areas. In those areas, we have 2 new ores that we can mine. One is going to be the hot rock ore, and one is going to be the cold rock ore. The crazy thing with these ores is you can't mine them right out the gate automatically. I'll probably show some clips here. The cold ore and the hot ore, if you just walk up to them, you're immediately going to start taking damage and it can actually kill you. The trick to unlocking them is with the hot rock ore, you want to make sure at all times, starting in phase 2, that you have Molotov cocktails on you. Even in the beginning phase, you're going to want to craft a bunch of Molotov cocktails, but just improved Molotov cocktails. And then you also want improved frost grenades. And the frost grenades are what neutralize the hot rocks. So the hot rocks, I probably showed the clip here of what the 2 different rocks look like. One's going to be the blue dark gray rock with bright blue light stripes on it. The hot rock is going to be the dark rock with the glowing red lava stripes on it. The hot rock, again, will use the frost grenade to neutralize it. Once you hit it with a frost grenade, then you can interact with it. And then same vice versa goes for the cold rock. You would throw a Molotov at it. That would neutralize it, and then you can mine it as normal. And if you're using a drill, you get about 50 ore each time you mine one of those rocks. So keep that in mind. And then those hot and cold rocks is what you would use to craft your basically chaosium. And for whatever reason on the test server, even though I have chaosium in my inventory, oh, it actually, some of it did get used. So I guess over time it is working. So it just takes a while. You can build a bunch of this stuff, and it'll last for a long time. So if you build a nice little stockpile, you won't have to worry about it for a while. But basically how it works is you have that lantern on your hotbar, and it looks like a lantern by default. And then if you turn it on with 4, the icon changes to like a glow stick, and then your temperature will just instantly increase or decrease. So we're going from 5 degrees, and then the second I turn on my lantern, it jumps to 20 degrees. So that lantern is going to be a 15-degree swing in either cold or heat, depending on the temperature you're in. So the big things, like I said, that you're going to want to do as soon as we reach the second phase is build the vintage, or build your lantern and gather those 2 new ore types. So that way you get a 15-degree swing with the active item, and then build this new lantern. Now the lantern can also use the hot rock and cold rock as well. Unlike the campfire, this one has the cold options. You can use the cold crystals to decrease the temperature by 15 degrees, or you can use the hot crystals to increase the temperature by 15 degrees. You can also, again, use logs and charcoal if you're just doing basic heat in a lower level area. But the cool thing with this is it has, like I mentioned earlier, a longer range. So now we can stand all the way out almost to our door and still get that temperature buff. Let me turn this off. So, oh, I haven't actually turned it on yet. My bad. So let's go ahead and put some logs in here. So this should be a 5-degree swing in the heat direction. And then you have to manually turn it on, just like the campfire. So now that it's up and running, you'll see the little animation. And now we're at 10 degrees. And this can go all the way up to basically your outer doors before it starts decreasing. So that's why we're able to add another increased ring radius around the entire base. But it also works above as well. So if we go upstairs now, you'll see that even though I'm running around upstairs, all of this area is 10 degrees as well. So we're getting the 5-degree shift here. Now, as you go out a ways on the upper floor, because it's almost like a spherical and not a cylinder, you will get a little bit of fall off towards the edges. So anything you put up with just the one furnace, you're going to want to pull away from the walls a little bit. Ideally, though, by this point, you should have plenty of wood stocked up. Ideally, you would want even more of the hot rocks and cold ores as well. So once you get to phase 2 and you've got some more materials, what you could start doing is putting these like in the center over here underneath the stairs to kind of stagger it, and do 2 of them, one on the bottom on either side of the stairwell. And that way, regardless of where you stand on either side of the base, you're going to be at that 10 degrees all the way to the walls. So from here, you can upgrade to 2 furnaces instead of 1 to kind of boost it a little bit more. But there is a few things to make it a little bit more easily as well. If we go back to the mimetics, so far we have the lantern and the upgraded furnace. But moving on to the mimetic tree here, that was under crafting. We now have upgrades to the stove as well. So we're going to get access to the electric stove as well as the refrigerator and also the integrated kitchen, I believe. So that's going to unlock a bunch of new recipes, much like how we survived on them in the first phase. Now we're going to have beefier recipe items to get us through the second phase. Sizzling, these are all going to be spicy foods, so they use the polar peppers a lot, but they're all going to give you increases to cold resist for the spicy foods. Then we have a couple chilled foods, chilled ice melon soup, and the iced mint tea. That will give you 80 hydration and 80 food accordingly, but give you heat resistance by 20 and or cold resistance by 20. So you'd want one of each of these for your hydration and energy for the later phases. The other thing that we get here as well on the electric stove is dried seaweed. Not a big deal, but it gives 50 energy. No temperature shift though, but that is another thing that you can potentially craft. And then the last one we can't get until the final phase, so we'll wait on that for a minute. So you're going to want to get a new stove is the next thing you're going to want. So now we've got our lantern, our furnace in the middle, upgraded base design, and an upgraded stove to start crafting those higher level recipes. The other thing that we can start making is our thermal tower. This starts in phase 2, And this is where the cooperation through all the players in the community and the hive are going to start coming into play. And what you can do is using the hot rock ore that you have and the cold rock ore, you will be able to build a thermal tower outside of your territory. And it has a ton of useful benefits. So if we come over here, I'm just weighed down, so this is taking longer. You can go ahead and interact with it. The first phase, research reactor to unlock, will require 60 hot rock ore and 60 cold crystal ore to activate the reactor. If you have that, you can click start. That will have a basically 1 minute countdown timer in order for this thing to activate. So let's go ahead and wait the 1 minute and see this live here. And I believe it transforms. So while that's talking and upgrading now, we'll move on to something else here. So we've got the thermal tower being prepped, our upgraded base, our new furnace in phase 2, our new stove, and our lantern. Those are the key things that you're going to be looking for memetics-wise in phase 2. The other thing that we can do... Oh, actually, for phase 2, I think that's going to be it, because we don't have access to the tier 4 upgrades yet. So it's just going to be upgrading the base, upgrading your stove, getting a better and cooking better recipes, upgrading to the better furnace, so we have a wider range of heat, and then starting on our thermal tower. So once the thermal tower goes, there we have it. We start to see it being built. And now how this thermal tower works is because it has to be built outside of a territory, you and your hive members are going to have to coordinate and build around this thing. So if we go and interact with it, looks pretty cool. My apologies for being so slow right now. I should have dropped off that wood. But now that this is up and running, we can manage it. We've got the heat spread, which is going to take a bunch of materials. Sulfur landscape, which is going to take a bunch of materials. Natural salt well, snowy realm Eden, snowy realm Elysium. The temperature around the thermal tower is optimal, and a batch of random animals will gather within its radiation range. Resistant treatment. Weapons and armor crafted at gear workbenches within the thermal tower's range will get increased durability. Habitable temperature. You get increased movement speed, jump height within the range. Community medical care. The thermal tower maintains a comfortable temperature, granting all nearby players 3% disease recovery. And so basically, as you can see, you get a bunch of boosts for you in your hive. And as you're managing it, you can upgrade its basically points using Chaosium to run it and increase its territory coverage. So you're going to plant and find, ideally, a flat level playing area, plant this thermal tower down, and then have all of your hive members build their base kitty corner, like butted up against it, around the perimeter of whatever size the tower currently is. Eventually, you're going to be able to upgrade this. You're going to be able to upgrade your territory size. So once you increase the range, you'll have to move your territories back a little bit and put it as the farther outer range and keep everyone underneath this bubble as possible. That's going to be its covered territory. Just the initial foundation is the only thing you have to build around. The covered territory is what you would build underneath. So ideally, you actually probably then could keep it closer, and then as your base gets bigger, the wider area of coverage will just cover your bigger base. You could also not just use this for your territory, but because it's used strategically across the entire map, there are certain areas that are very, very dangerous with super extreme temperatures. And what I'm thinking is going to happen, it was kind of hard to test this out in the test server, is similar to Death Stranding. If you guys have played that game, where kind of the entire world and the entire community that's playing the game helps each other by building structures. I have a feeling that this is going to be like a mini thermal tower network that's going to happen throughout these phases. Different hives and different players are going to strategically build these thermal towers all over the map and eventually upgrade them. And you can recruit people to basically give permissions to add funds to the depot of like crafting materials to maintain these towers. And because it's a PvE scenario, everyone helps everyone. So you ideally want to help as many of these towers out as possible, because it's only going to cover a larger area with a nice little temperature, basically resistance buff. So you're going to start seeing these towers popping up all over the place. Now, I believe that once you go to one of these upgrade phases, you are going to have to defend it and build the territory purification almost around it. So all of your territories will not only have to have turrets around the outer perimeter on the outside of the base for normal territory purifications, but you're also going to have them pointing in, ideally, to defend your tower when your tower gets attacked. So you want to preserve this tower, and you and your hive members want to upgrade this as fast and keep it maintained as frequently as possible, because this is going to be a big, basically game-changing swing for survivability once you're able to craft these. And I don't think you're able to start crafting them until phase 2, which is when things start getting a little bit more intense for weather. But as you can see, you can make it a sulfur landscape, increase the radiation range beneath your territory, salt well. You can start getting salt for free from underground water sources. So a lot of cool buffs. And as you can see, as these research goes on, and you upgrade it even more as these phases go on, it's going to give you even more bonuses. Oil exploration. The cluster effect allows you to upgrade new thing. Lush foliage. There's going to be increases to the deviation rate of our farms that we grow. So this tower, you're going to want to bring with you every time you move your settlement of hive members, and focus all of your building around this hive. It's going to be almost be like Frostpunk if you played that. So a really, really fun survival game where it pretty much has thermal towers like this that you have to build around strategically. And then it obviously has a depot where you can just drag and drop a bunch of materials in here on the fly, so you can use that to upgrade later on. But big turning point in phase 2 is the thermal towers. And that is the survival tips I have for the second phase. Once we get into the third phase, by this point, pretty much everything unlocks, the entire map, every dungeon, as well as our full memetics tree. And there's a last few upgraded things that we can get for the final phase that's going to make this a little bit easier as well. So let's go ahead and do that now. And I apologize, we're already at 36 minutes here, but I want to go over every option that we have. So by this point, everything is unlocked. So on the... or detection's not. The last thing we would need really on infrastructure is going to be our lantern. So we don't have to worry about anything here other than increasing our building material types that we're allowed to increase the quality of our base for purifications. But moving over to crafting, once we get down into here, I don't actually think there's anything new in crafting either, other than polar frontline. And this is going to be handy when you're running around. This is pretty much the only seasonal upgrade in the memetics tree for crafting, is going to be the portable warmer and the portable air conditioner. This is going to be a craftable tactical item that you can drop on the ground. I may have some crafted right now on me that I can show off. So let's go ahead and put these in the hotbar. So we've already got a heater. We'll put down an air conditioner. So how these are going to work is if you're out in the wild and you need an emergency break, basically to get out of the cold or get out of the heat, you can throw these down. So the portable air conditioner will obviously do cold. So you would just equip it, put it on the ground, and then in a giant AoE circle after a few seconds, as you can see, now we get a minus 23 degree shift in temperature, which isn't that good right now because it's already pretty cold. So we don't want to get too cold in here. So I don't know if we can actually destroy that or not. Nope, we can't. So that'll just do its thing. Well, the other thing that we can do, if we want to just balance it out, is throw down a portable heater. So this will do the exact same thing, except it's going to be orange. And that will give you a nice jump in heat. So if we're going from 23 to 3, that means it's a 20-degree jump as long as you're in this area. So these little portable things are what we're going to be using on the fly. We got some annoying chromatic aberration. It's kind of bugging out the vision right now. Get rid of caps. It's probably not going to let me put this down because I got this. There we go. It let me. But that is the tactical items that we're going to be able to use. And then we get access to some more advanced stuff. And this will tie in to our memetics specializations. So we've got the lantern. We've got the upgraded portable temperature controllers. And then in the final phases here, we actually could have gotten this in the second phase as well. Should have added this. We had the thermal tower and then this as well. You get cooling fans and electric heaters. These work the same way as the campfire and the furnace that we have in the center of the base, but they just run on power. So you don't have to worry about feeding them fuel all the time. You can just plug them in and they will work. So if we go ahead and say turn, we don't even need to turn that on now. We can go throw this down, and I believe it's a 10 or 15 degree swing as well. They're going to be under functional facilities, cooling fan. You can go and put that down and hook that up to power. There we go. So now that that's up and running, we went from 10 degrees, 30 degrees because of the 20 boost. This should bring it to 0 degrees, ideally. Oh, I haven't turned it on. Same thing. I always forget to turn them on. So there we go. So you'll start seeing the mist coming out, and now we're at 0 degrees. So that's a 10 degree change. And you can put these more easily around the base. So like I said, bottom floor, you could technically leave one furnace in the middle. And then if you wanted to heat the upstairs, you could just put a couple of these electrical ones on the second floor, and that'll be a little bit easier to space it out. But this has a decent range. Let's measure the range here. So if we go from here, we're at 0. And 10. So that's a pretty far range. That's almost as long as the furnace, basically. But just on one level. So it would do the same thing if you ran the portable heater, the electric heater. What am I doing? Going to build electric heater. Throw that down. Hook it up to power. And then make sure you turn it on. So this will be available in phase 2 as well. And this will do the exact same thing, but now give you a 10 degree swing in the heat direction. So once we start getting into the later phases, we start unlocking some better facilities that'll allow us to manage the temperature in our territory a little bit more easily and allow us to expand our base and make it a little bit bigger because we have more options for heating that are a little bit more efficient. So we have the thermal tower, ideally, and the electrical heater and cooler unit. But then in the final phase, what you can unlock, go back to the memetics tree, is going to be the polar line. That's going to be the portable ones that I showed off. That's the final phase, as well as the final upgrade tiers of your thermal tower. And then last but not least, what I wanted to go over once we get into the later phases are the memetic specializations, because these can help with temperature and give you some additional cool items as well. So we go to memetics, temperatures. I try to grab as many of the scenario themed one as possible, so just to give you an idea of some of the ones that we'll have. Spicy pepper is going to be a good one, because once you get the electric stove, like I mentioned earlier, we get all those spicy recipes. Anything that uses a pepper in its dish basically becomes 30% more effective, and when consumed, they deal damage equal to 10% psi intensity to nearby enemies, with a 30% chance to deal additional damage equal to 90% psi intensity and inflict 1 stack of burn. So every one of those spicy food dishes that we're going to be doing for basically cold resistance early on in phase 2, if you have this one, it's going to make all of them do AoE damage as well and give you a damage buff, and just improve the effectiveness. Another tactical item specialization is snowmobile. This will give increased movement speed in blizzards, in snow, and give you plus 10 cold resistance. If you have it in your inventory, you'd craft this at the synthesis bench. And on the topic of the synthesis bench, another memetic that I'll go over here real quick because it's part of this that I unlocked is molecular structure research. This is a big one. This will allow you to use the hot rock and cold crystal ore that you get to make fire crystals and ice crystals, which are going to be gold variations of those new rare ore types. And you would craft those at the supplies workbench. And the reason why these gold versions are important is because a lot of the tactical items that you get in the later phases and facilities that would normally use the hot rock or the cold crystals, If you use these gold variations, they actually get bonus benefits. So a good example of this would be that snowmobile tactical item, for example. If I was to craft this straight up and look at the snowmobile using just normal cold crystal, we get the plus 10% cold resistance, plus 20% movement speed in snow, and 10% movement speed during a blizzard. However, if we swap the cold crystal out with an ice crystal, which is one of the gold variants, not only do we get those same bonuses we did before, but now we also get a reduction to stamina consumption when rolling, running, and melee speed swinging when the device is active. So if you have that molecular perk, it's going to be pretty handy for the late game, because almost all the tack items that you're going to be building and your later end high-end facilities that require a hot or cold crystal to make will give you added benefits with these gold crystals. So really, really handy. And then the other one that I unlocked, which is similar to the microchip one, but for this particular season, if we go to Memetics, is going to be called the, I think it's refining smelting. No, it's going to be composite crystal. So on the topic of those gold crystals, the other thing we can build with composite crystal is a composite crystal crafted from the cold crystal or hot crystal ores that can sell to a vendor for a high price. TLDR, they sell for 12,000 energy links a piece, and they look like this on the supply bench. So this isn't so much for survivability, but it'll be good for surviving if you need to buy something useful with your coins. They are going to look like this right here. Come on, composite crystal. So that's what that looks like. So that's another specialization mimetic that could be handy to grab. Moving on, just some of the other ones that I managed to unlock is going to be the underground pump. This one will allow you to pump water through ice layers to get resources below ice, which you normally wouldn't be able to do. We also have refined smelting, allowing you to refine sulfur into hot rock ore, which normally you'd have to be in a high risk temperature zone to get that hot rock ore. This potentially could allow you to unlock that a little bit sooner. So that's another big one. Chaosium material boost to your furnaces. The electric furnace gains chaosium yield plus 20% for every 20 degrees Celsius in excess of 20 degrees. So if you build your base in a high temperature zone and you put your furnace there, you can get upwards of plus 60% chaosium when you craft it with this particular perk. We also have cluster grenades. I wasn't sure if this was in the previous one. Mention down in the comments if this was. I think it might be new. Grenade, after exploding, generates a secondary bomb that sticks to a random target hit and explodes after a secondary delay. I have a feeling this was available. I've just never seen it until now. But the final one that I got, which is going to be really handy in a tight pinch situation, is going to be the Silent Fire Shield. Unlocks a new mimetic formula. Silent Fire Shield bench can be crafted at the synthesis bench, and when the environmental temperature falls below negative 10 degrees Celsius, it generates a 360 degree shield for up to 300 seconds, with a shield value equal to your HP plus 100% psi intensity minus the current temperature within a 500 point value. So basically it's a survivability bubble in a emergency situation. You just craft this tack item, have it on you, and anytime that you enter an extreme zone without realizing it, this will instantly trigger and give you a full several minutes to react and protect you from the elements. You can heal up, you can teleport out if you need to get back to your base, things like that, because as you saw from some of those clips, if you enter a hot zone without the proper food or things like that, you are dead literally within 10 to 15 seconds. You either freeze to death or burn to death. So having that little get out of jail free card shield is another tack item that could be pretty handy. So I'm sure there's several more of these specializations are going to be exclusive to this scenario. I unfortunately just don't have the option to get every single one. I could probably do an alt account and figure it out, and maybe I'll come up with a list. But here's just an example of some of the ones that you can look forward to late game. So those are the specializations. So yeah, that is pretty much all the tips and tricks that I would recommend for the order of operations of things to help survive. Just to recap really quick, phase 1, main priority things that you're going to want to do: build a 1-tier circular or hexagonal base with a campfire in the middle. Upgrade your mimetics to get unlock bronze to craft a torch, and then hunt as many animal pelts and gather as many of the new herbs as possible to start either eating them raw or craft into early level stove recipes. And then last but not least, craft the hedium and coldium ore to just passively have those rocks in your backpack to give you a buff. So that would be phase 1. Phase 2, first order of business, upgrading the base. So you can add the stairwell, add the second floor, as well as upgrade the campfire to the furnace stove, or not the furnace, but the vintage stove, and put that in the center. That has a larger range and has the option to use the hot rock and cold rock to increase the temperature even more. On the topic of the hot rock and cold rock, you want to go to the higher extreme temperature areas, start farming for those ores. You get 50 apiece, get a stockpile of those, because you're going to need 60 of each to craft your thermal tower. So in phase 2, upgrade your base and then build the thermal tower with you and your hive members. Find an open area, put the thermal tower down first, then have your entire hive build your bases around it. That way all of you equally get the benefits of everything within the radius of effect of the tower. Build that over time and slowly start upgrading it. Then obviously upgrade your stove to get access to better recipes. Upgrade your benches and your armor with higher tier hides to give you resistances and buffs as well for your armor. And then last but not least, once you get into the later phases, start crafting those one-off endgame recipes for the high tier resistances. Craft your portable items for heat resistance to drop down in a pinch and take advantage of your mimetic specializations for some of those tactical items. And then last but not least, create the electrical, more efficient temperature control items like the cooling unit and the fan, or the heating fan, to place in different corners of your base to make it a little bit more efficient for heating and not have to waste your materials as much. And with all of that in hand, you should be good to go and survive without any problems. It's going to get pretty crazy in the later phases. You're going to start running into these big, colossal, giant enemies called the Chaos Weavers. There's going to be a frost version, probably show some clips here of them, a frost version, and then a lava fire version. And this is going to be like a 3 times bigger battle than a Prime War event. You're going to want to get multiple people to join up and craft Gatling cannons and things like that, because once they start spawning in phase 2 and phase 3, they cause drastic temperature shifts in all areas, including the neutral settlement zones where NPCs are and stuff. You could teleport to a normal settlement and freeze to death if you don't have the right equipment, especially if one of those Chaos Weavers are around. So you're going to want to type in chat, say, hey, we want to try and take down this Chaos Weaver, get a big group together with some Gatling cannons, some explosives, and just your best kit that you can build, and go and take it down. And I believe the way it works is once the Chaos Weaver in that region is destroyed, the temperatures kind of level out over time for a short period until another one is made and spawns, and you get some neutral temperature fixes for a little bit of a decent duration, probably a day or two. I'm not sure how long that duration is going to be. We actually haven't killed one on the test server yet that I know of, but once you kill one, it should level out the temperatures for that area for a short period of time, and then you just basically build up again and prep for the next one, and it's going to be an endless cycle of just upgrading your base, killing the Chaos Weavers in the area to neutralize the extreme temperatures, and then at the same time clearing out all the new settlements and the new monoliths and things like that, and the 2 new silos. I have made guides for those as well, or not so much guides, but just reveals of what to expect. So yeah, that is all the tips and tricks that I would recommend to help you survive across each phase and showing off what's going to unlock at each phase. The biggest thing, again, is going to be that thermal tower that you're going to want to manage with you and your teammates. That's going to be the catalyst of everything on each phase. That's going to keep you alive in the extreme weather. All the rest is just more individual for your own personal territory. But yeah, that is pretty much the guide, you guys. Again, I apologize for its length. There is going to be timestamps breaking all of this up. Hopefully that helps. If it did, be sure to smash that like button, comment down below. I appreciate all of your guys' feedback. Also, if you want to keep up to date with all my future content, I got a bunch more videos for the new Way of Winter scenario coming out soon. Consider subscribing and turn on that notification bell. And then last but not least, if you want to join a killer community of like-minded gamers, feel free to check the links down in the description and join us on the Discord. We've got over 1,000 members in there now, many of which are playing Once Human. So hopefully you jump in and we see you guys around here soon. But until the next one, hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you all later.